Today's reading begins in 2 Samuel, chapter 19, starting in verse 11. King David sent to Zadok and to Abiathar the priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, Why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the speech of all Israel has come to the king to return him to his house? You are my brothers, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? Say to Amasa, Aren't you my bone and my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if you aren't captain of the army before me continually, instead of Joab." He bowed the heart of all the men of Judah, even as one man, so that they sent to the king, saying, "Return, you and all your servants." So the king returned, and came to the Jordan. Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to bring the king over the Jordan. Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, who was of Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba, the servant of Saul's house, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him, and they went through the Jordan in the presence of the king. A ferry boat went to bring over the king's household, and to do what he thought good. Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had come over the Jordan. He said to the king, "Don't let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember that which your servant did perversely the day that my lord the king went out of Jerusalem, that the king should take it to his heart. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come today as the first of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king." But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For don't I know that I am king over Israel today?" The king said to Shimei, "You will not die." The king swore to him. Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and he had neither groomed his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he came home in peace. When he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He answered, "My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go with the king, because your servant is lame. He has slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is as an angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king, yet you set your servant amongst those who ate at your own table. What right therefore have I yet that I should appeal any more to the king?" The king said to him, "Why do you speak any more of your matters? I say, you and Ziba divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Yes, let him take all, because my lord the king has come in peace to his own house." Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim, and he went over the Jordan with the king to conduct him over the Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, even 80 years old. He had provided the king with sustenance while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. The king said to Barzillai, "Come over with me, and I will sustain you with me in Jerusalem." Barzillai said to the king, "How many are the days of the years of my life, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am 80 years old today. Can I discern between good and bad? Can your servant taste what I eat, or what I drink? Can I hear the voice of singing men and singing women any more? Why then should your servant be a burden to my lord the king? Your servant will just go over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please let your servant turn back again, that I may die in my own city, by the grave of my father and my mother. But behold, your servant Chimham, let him go over with my lord the king, and do to him what shall seem good to you." The king answered, "Chimham shall go over with me, and I will do to him that which shall seem good to you. Whatever you request of me, that I will do for you." All the people went over the Jordan, and the king went over. Then the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. So the king went over to Gilgal, and Chimham went over with him. All the people of Judah brought the king over, and also half the people of Israel. Behold, all the men of Israel came to the king, and said to the king, "Why have our brothers, the men of Judah, stolen you away, and brought the king and his household over the Jordan, and all David's men with him?" All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, "Because the king is a close relative to us. Why then are you angry about this matter? Have we eaten at all at the king's cost, or has he given us any gift?" The men of Israel answered the men of Judah, and said, "We have 10 parts in the king, and we have also more claim to David than you. Why then did you despise us, that our advice should not be first had in bringing back our king?" The words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. There happened to be there a wicked fellow, whose name was Sheba the son of Bichri, a Benjamite, and he blew the trumpet, and said, "We have no portion in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, Israel." So all the men of Israel went up from following David, and followed Sheba the son of Bichri, but the men of Judah joined with their king, from the Jordan even to Jerusalem. David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to keep the house, and put them in custody, and provided them with sustenance, but didn't go in to them. So they were shut up to the day of their death, living in widowhood. Then the king said to Amasa, "Call me the men of Judah together within 3 days, and be here present." So Amasa went to call the men of Judah together, but he stayed longer than the set time which had been appointed to him. David said to Abishai, "Now Sheba the son of Bichri will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your lord's servants and pursue after him, lest he get himself fortified cities and escape out of our sight." Joab's men went out after him with the Cherethites, the Pelethites, and all the mighty men, and they went out of Jerusalem to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. When they were at the great stone which is in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Joab was clothed in his apparel of war that he had put on, and on it was a sash with a sword fastened on his waist in its sheath, and as he went along it fell out. Joab said to Amasa, "Is it well with you, my brother?" Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him, but Amasa took no heed to the sword that was in Joab's hand. So he struck him with it in the body, and shed out his bowels to the ground, and didn't strike him again, and he died. Joab and Abishai his brother pursued Sheba the son of Bichri. One of Joab's young men stood by him, and said, "He who favors Joab, and he who is for David, let him follow Joab." Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the highway. When the man saw that all the people stood still, he carried Amasa out of the highway into the field, and cast a garment over him when he saw that everyone who came by him stood still. When he was removed out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. The Gospel of John, chapter 21, starting in verse 1. After these things, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself this way: Simon Peter, Thomas called Didymus, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." They told him, "We are also coming with you." They immediately went out and entered into the boat. That night they caught nothing, but when day had already come, Jesus stood on the beach, yet the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. Jesus therefore said to them, "Children, have you anything to eat?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." They cast it therefore, and now they weren't able to draw it in for the multitude of fish. That disciple therefore whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." So when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he wrapped his coat around himself, for he was naked, and threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from the land, but about 200 cubits away, dragging the net full of fish. So when they got out on the land, they saw a fire of coals there, with fish and bread laid on it. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught." Simon Peter went up and drew the net to land, full of 153 great fish. Even though there were so many, the net wasn't torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat breakfast." None of the disciples dared inquire of him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. Then Jesus came and took the bread, gave it to them, and the fish likewise. This is now the 3rd time that Jesus was revealed to his disciples after he had risen from the dead. So when they had eaten their breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I have affection for you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I have affection for you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the 3rd time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you have affection for me?" Peter was grieved because he asked him the third time, "Do you have affection for me?" He said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I have affection for you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Most certainly, I tell you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and walked where you wanted to. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go." Now he said this, signifying by what kind of death he would glorify God. When he had said this, he said to him, "Follow me." Then Peter, turning around, saw a disciple following. This was the disciple whom Jesus loved, the one who had also leaned on Jesus' breast at the supper, and asked, "Lord, who is going to betray you?" Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" Jesus said to him, "If I desire that he stay until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." This saying therefore went out amongst the brothers, that this disciple wouldn't die. Yet Jesus didn't say to him that he wouldn't die, but, "If I desire that he stay until I come, what is that to you?" This is the disciple who testifies about these things, and wrote these things. We know that his witness is true. There are also many other things which Jesus did, which, if they would all be written, I suppose that even the world itself wouldn't have room for the books that would be written. Psalm 120, beginning in verse 1. In my distress I cried to the Lord. He answered me. Deliver my soul, Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What will be given to you, and what will be done more to you, you deceitful tongue? Sharp arrows of the mighty, with coals of juniper. Woe is me, that I live in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. My soul has had her dwelling too long with him who hates peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Proverbs chapter 16, starting in verse 16. How much better it is to get wisdom than gold. Yes, to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He who keeps his way preserves his soul.